that I would like to speak on Bhagavad Gita and leadership for the 21st century. So now you might wonder if it's relevant. Gita is so old and we have the 21st century, and where does leadership come into the picture? Anyway, I'm going to start with a lovely sloka from the Vedas, which is always chanted before one begins anything. Sorry about the chits. You know, I always speak extempore. Only time I took a small bit to note down was last month when I was asked to address the House of Lords in London, and now in this August gathering, little nervous. So, the sloka is like this: Sahana vavatu, Sahano bhunaktu, Sahaviryam karavavahai, Tejasvina vaditamasthuma vidvishavahai, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Which means, if you note, the most important word is Saha, which means you and I. May both of us be protected. May you and I be nourished. May our energy increase, virya, vitality increase. May our spiritual energies increase. Tejasvina vaditamastu. Ma vidvishavahai. Let us not quarrel with each other. Let's not fight with each other. Because all understanding is in the form of a dialogue. It's not a monologue. And this is also the reason why I thought I would take up the Gita. Now, the Bhagavad Gita, one might say, is 1,000 years old or 800 years old. The chronology, the calculations differ due to various people's opinions. Anyway, it's ancient. Okay, agreed. But I would say that it is very relevant because I think it's the scripture of mankind. It's not for one period of time. It's an eternal message. And as far as leadership is concerned, I would say that the very fact that the Bhagavad Gita was enacted in the middle of a battlefield of Kurukshetra, where the first chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the dissatisfaction or indecisiveness of Arjuna, shows that it's not just merely a scripture for the persons who sit in the cave and meditate, but it's for daily living. And in daily living, leadership plays a very important role. I think you understand what I'm trying to say. So, it's a scripture because when it starts, Arjuna puts down his bow and says, Nayotse tatho yuddhaya. I am not going to fight this battle. Now, this is a battle that we all face in life throughout. Politically, personally, individually, administratively, this battle of not knowing what to do. That we stand on a threshold and don't know how to move forward is something that we fight every day. Therefore, I say that even in the 21st century leadership, which this conclave is all about, it's a very important part of our ancient wisdom, because this country, this India we have, is firmly rooted in the essence of our traditions and ancient wisdom. So I think it is very relevant. See here that Krishna is tutoring Arjuna to become a perfect leader. He says, what has happened to you? Till now I thought you were a great strong leader. Today you are shaky, you don't know how to proceed. Proceed, because the only way in life is through unselfish karma. Action for the sake of others, not for yourself. I think this is a very important aspect of leadership. A leader is not there for himself or herself. A leader is there for the public, for others. Not only in politics, but also, I know there are industrialists also here. Industries are not made for yourself. They are made for the industry as such, as a body. So, now I come to, is there a specific description of who is a good leader in the Gita? Well, there is not exactly who is a leader, but there is the question of who is the greatest of yogis, especially in the 12th chapter, which is called Bhakti Yoga. Now, when I say yogi, Gita itself, Krishna himself says, when he says yogi, it means a person not who sits in the cave and meditates 24 hours, but who's outside doing service to others and also improving his inner self. So it applies to everybody. It not only applies to who is the greatest of yogis, although context here, the word used is yogi. So in the 12th chapter, Arjuna asks Krishna, who according to you is the greatest of leaders, the greatest of yogis? Can you give me a definition? Is he one who wears this or wears that or worships this or worships that? Or is there something else? So Krishna says that's not the concern. The concern is what are the attributes of a leader. How would there be a great yogi? What are his attributes? And he beautifully states one or two things, which is, one, a leader should be samniyam indriyagramam, should be in control of his emotions. One who has control over his senses, over his emotions. Today we don't look at all this. We think a leader is somebody who's elected. A leader, according to the Gita, is someone who has his emotions under his control, perfect control, because he uses them when they are for good of others and keeps them in abeyance when he has to be silent. The other quality is sarvatra samabuddhaya. That, of course, when we look at politics, I don't think we need to teach much about this, because sarvatra samabuddhaya means to be level, tranquil of mind in the midst of all circumstances. When you do something good, it's quite possible then one part of the media might say you're doing wrong. It's quite possible then another part of the social media might say you're doing right. A leader's job is to do the right thing and not get depressed by the negative comments or too elated by the flattery. This is very important in leadership. Otherwise, one falls and succumbs to all that the social media is weaving around us. So don't you think it's relevant today? Is it only relevant 1,000 years ago? Sarvatra samabuddhaya. Have you noticed even in daily life, if you need to work efficiently, you need to keep your minds tranquil in the midst of all circumstances. Don't get too elated. You know what happens when you're too elated? Blood pressure. And when you get too depressed, blood pressure. Can we keep it tranquil? At least let's have the understanding that one has to keep the mind tranquil. Then the third, which is so important for a leader, for a teacher, for a yogi, sarvatra samabuddhaya, sarvabhuta hiterata. One who has the concern of all living beings in his heart. One who is concerned about all who suffer and all who are in trouble and who wants to lift them up. Now, Swami Vivekananda was the first person, I think, for many years now, to have come out with a very clear-cut and wonderful interpretation of the Karma Yoga of Gita. He said, Atmano mokshartha jagat hitaya cha. Moksha for the Atma is all right, but hit, goodness for others, service to the Lord, service to mankind who you consider to be part of the Supreme Reality is one of the most important steps. So not only moksha for yourself, but also jagat hitaya cha, welfare of the world. If these two things go together, Swamiji said, this is what spirituality actually is. He was the one who first exhorted the sannyasin to come out and serve the fellow beings. Especially, he said, the underprivileged are Daridra Narayana. Narayana in the form of Daridra, misery. Serve them. Not only do you serve humanity, you're a leader then. You also prepare yourself towards ultimate salvation spiritually. Now, I want to give you a few quotes from Swami Vivekananda, very small quotes. We have 10 more minutes, not to worry. And these quotes show him to be more of a socialist in a different way than all our socialists put together. I would call it Vedantic socialism, because Vedanta believes that every soul is potentially divine. And therefore, all are same. There is no difference between anybody. Swamiji said, one of his quotes, "Let new India arise in your place." This is quoting from Swami Vivekananda's Complete Works, Volume 7. "Let new India arise in your place. Let her arise out of the peasant's cottage, grasping the plough and the huts of the fisherman, the cobbler and the sweeper. Let her spring from the grocer's shop, from beside the oven of the fruit seller. Let her emanate from the factory, from the marts, from markets. Let her emerge from groves and forests, from hills and mountains. These common people have suffered oppression for thousands of years, suffered it without murmur. Can we bring them up? For if you train them," he said, "they, having suffered so much, have acquired infinite capacity to bear pains. They would make wonderful leaders." Now, so therefore, I think we should coin a new term called Vedantic socialism. Now, I'm not saying because I'm born in Kerala and I'm not a socialist. I'm neither right nor left. I'm more a spiritual person. Of course, when I say right, like the young journalist today said, I'm on the right side of things, I hope, not on the wrong side of things. So, then, on a personal note, I think that at present, please don't label me right, left. Under the present circumstance, I think a wonderful, dedicated person is working for upliftment of this country. I think so, personally. And on a personal note, 2 years ago on the PM's birthday, his office requested me to write a few words along with greetings. The request came from his OSDs, so I decided to do it. Among other things, it was a season, that particular season, when Padma Shris were being returned in protest and journalists were giving up their awards and things were happening. I'm sure he wouldn't be depressed, I think he's tranquil. But I gave him a little bit of sweet support by saying, when the Samudra Manthan was done years ago, churning of the ocean, the first thing that came out was poison. So some poison is coming out. We wait patiently for the Amrita to come up. But that should not prevent anyone from churning, and anyone who is churning deserves complete support from us. Non-political, political, it doesn't matter. Human support is required. I still think so. Now, I have 5 more minutes. There is also part of the social media, I'm not saying all, keep saying that he is a dictatorial person who has no concern. I beg to differ. I have my own personal opinions on this. I am nobody. I don't have to be respected. Nothing. And I'm not going to fight an election, please. First of all, I'm too old for that. And secondly, that's not my subject. That's not my profession. However, I need 2 minutes. My autobiography, the English version, was translated into Gujarati. It is called Autobiography, I forgot the name, what is it? Apprentice to a Himalayan Master, a Yogi's Autobiography, by Sri M. This or any Sri M. And when it was translated into Gujarati, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, who happens to be the Prime Minister now, took a look at it from the publisher and himself said, I'm going to come and launch this Gujarati edition. He didn't know me from Adam. So I went there and met him. He introduced me to some senior officers. He couldn't come that day because that day was the day his name was being put up in Delhi and there were some problems happening. So evening he couldn't come. So can you step in the morning and have a cup of tea at home? I said, okay. So he went. I'm saying all this not to show my importance. I'm nobody. I'm just saying there are human sides to things which we tend to overlook. We went, we had a cup of tea. The Padayatra, we had a Padayatra that starts from Kanyakumari and went to Srinagar. We walked for 1 year and 4 months. So preparations were on for the Padayatra. And he came to know, I mean, his intelligence inputs are very good, I think. He came to know and he said to me, anything you want to do in Gujarat, I can give you a lot of help because I have expertise. Very in a fun, joking manner, I told him, probably when the walk goes through Gujarat, you will be sitting in Delhi. So anyway, so as soon as the walk entered Gujarat, I got a phone call from the Prime Minister early in the morning at tea time, saying, welcome to Gujarat. I said, but you're sitting in Delhi. So, and then when the walk entered Bangalore, already 4 months, and I was walking, I got a call saying that the Prime Minister is here for some BJP meeting or something, executive meeting. He would like to see you. So I went to the Raj Bhavan. The first thing he told me to take off your socks. I want to see how your heels are. I said, I'm perfectly all right. He said, Aap sachmuch theek hain kya? I said, perfectly theek hu. Do we miss the human side when you see people only in TV and media and listen to what people have opinions about? This is what I wanted to say. So, this is the leadership of the 21st century. I remember the Upanishadic call, Uttishta Jagrata Prapya Varan Nibodhat. Wake up and move. We have much to achieve in front. I think India is moving towards a much greater global presence, not just economically and politically, but also spiritually. There was a time when we had wonderful universities like Nalanda here. People from all over the globe used to come here to study. Now we go to Harvard. It's okay, good to go to Harvard. I'm not saying anything about that. But I envisage a time that once again, India will become the teacher of the world. I know it because I travel around the globe regularly. One day I'm here, one day I'm somewhere else. The trickle has started. And I think it's going to become a flood. It's going to become big. It's a matter of time. Now, I have to thank the India Foundation for inviting me to address this August assembly. Especially thank Sri Ram Madhav, though he is not here right now. And before I end, I would again like to quote the Gita, which says in the last chapter, which is Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, I think many of you know this, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhana, Tatra Shrir Vijaya Bhutir, Dhruva Nirtir Matir Mama, which means wherever there is Krishna, please don't think that the Krishna has to stand before you. The understanding of what Krishna is, the Lord of Yoga, and Arjuna wielding the bow, there is good fortune, victory, prosperity, and sound policy. And I think this is where we are moving to. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Shriyam, for explaining the concept of leadership so beautifully using the Gita. We still have 5 minutes, so we'll open the floor to the audience for question and answers if they have any. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I have just a small question. You refer to chapter 12, verse number 4. Sanyam Mendriya Gramam Sarvatra Sambuddhiye Te Prapnuvanti Mamev Sarvbhuthite Rata. The fourth part you did not mention.
Oh, sorry.
Where Krishna says that these are the qualities of my bhakt. So, just one observation.
Yes, yes, sir.
And
you're right, perfectly right. I was trying to present it as also the qualities of leadership, because Krishna himself says that to Arjuna, who is a warrior, who is in front of the Kurukshetra battle, Arjuna, you become a yogi. So I was trying to put these two things together.
Thank you, sir. Now my question is with regard to another verse,
sir,
which is from Karma Yoga, chapter 3, verse 21.
Yes.
Where Krishna says, Yad yada charati shreshtas tat tat devetarojana sayat pramanam kurte lokas tadanu vartate.
Can you explain this?
Now here,
in English.
Yeah, in English it says that Yad yada charati shreshtas. Whichever way the leaders act, the people will follow. Lokas tadanu vartate. Sayat pramanam kurte. The standard that a leader sets is followed by everybody else. Now here, in certain commentaries, there is some confusion with regard to shreshtas, whether it regard to a good person having good qualities or whether it's really a leader. So I needed your comments on that.
Sir,
thank you.
I think since it is the Gita, it certainly refers to a good person. Because the whole theme of the Gita is to produce a perfect human being. So I don't think it's the other side. But it is true that you should imitate a leader.
I'll have another question. Gita Sarvabhauma Grantha hai, for time immemorial, for everybody. There is a shloka in 18th chapter. Adhishthanam tatha karta karanam cha prathak prathak vividhascha prathak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchakam.
Okay.
Now question is, since yesterday evening inaugural session, I was sitting in the back and this time Muniji asked me to come forward. There's lots of talk about leadership, terrorism, all the problems of the world, even quoting Trump. Gita has answers to every problem of the world. Question is this, very much related to our Bharat, India, for the last few centuries, whatever we have gone through. How come, I'm very specifically putting the question to you, you are a very learned person and I'm going to meet you after
not
this.
So learned. Okay.
How come Daivam had not been favoring India all along?
What is not, sir?
Daivam, Adhishthanam, Karta, Karanam, tools, Cheshta, efforts. These four, Arjuna, Krishna says,
yes,
you have right to do these four.
Right.
Adhishthanam, Sthanam, we don't have the hall, we can't have the meeting.
Right, I got it.
Karta, doers.
Yes.
Ram Madhavji made a big, gigantic effort to conduct this. It's the fourth conclave. I'm fortunate to attend this fourth one. That is Adhishthanam, Karta, doers. Karanam, tools. If I don't have this mic, so Cheshta, Prathak Cheshta, efforts. Lot of kings had fought ferociously. Mahana Pratap, Padmini, 16,000 went to the power so that they don't get, their honor is not. So question is this, how come Daivam did not favor our such a wonderful civilization which has survived no matter what we say and is still struggling, and we have left the right morning discussion, and I would leave it to you. This is a very big loaded question. Thank you.
No,
Hari Om.
I know. There is one thing I have to tell you. It's not as if that everything is gone and that it has not been neglected. I think the nuggets of truth are there in every one of us in our hearts. It is there. But unfortunately, we fell into a period of crass materialism and did not look back at that. I think a time has come when we have realized this is not all life is about. We need to move forward. So I think now is the time when the change might happen. This is my faith and understanding of the fact. And I wish speedily that we recognize this fact and move forward so that we can become a really global. When I say global, it's not economic or anything, which of course is all right, but you know what I mean. To think of every human being as a spark of the divine. I think that if Swami Vivekananda said, if you forget the spiritual essence of this country, no matter what you achieve, it's of no use. So I say that. Now, before I leave, I need to tell you something, because many people might be thinking, who is this Sri M? Suddenly produced from the hat. Now, I was born in a Muslim family in Kerala, and I was named Mumtaz Ali Khan when I was born. At the age of 19, I went to the Himalayas. 2 minutes. I went off to the Himalayas and met my guru, Maheshwar Nath, who named me Madhukar Nath and gave me initiation into the Nath Sampradaya. Like our friend in UP, who is also Guru Bhai but much younger, Adityanath ji. So, from there, I decided to remain a bachelor till the age of 37, and acting on the advice of my master, I got married. And now I am a Grihastha. People call me M because that is the first letter of Madhukar Nath, Mumtaz, also because it represents Manav, which is the word for a human being in Sanskrit, Manushya. So which is why I am called M. Out of respect, some people call me Shri M. It's better than Mr. M because it sounds like James Bond's boss. So thank you very much. Namaskar.
Just a moment. May I request Shaurya Doval of the India Foundation to felicitate Shri M, please? Thank you. We will move to the next session. May I request Shefali Vaidya to take over, please?
Thank you, Smita. Now we move on to the next session, which are the presentations by some eminent people. The format is every speaker will get 15 minutes to make his or her presentation, and then there'll be a 5 minutes question answer session. I would request the audience to keep their questions to the point and short, please, so that we can have more questions. The first speaker for today for this session is Sri Granthi Mallikarjuna Rao. He is the founder chairman of GMR Group, a global infrastructure development company based in Chennai. I request Sri Granthi Mallikarjuna Rao to come to the stage and make his presentation, please. Thank you.
India Foundation Management and Mr. Saurya, Rajiv Lal, and other friends. Before going to speech, just I want to correct. I'm not from Chennai now, I'm from Delhi now. We never been in Chennai this. We moved from Rajam to Bangalore, Bangalore to Delhi now. Other dignitaries, government leaders, corporate leaders, media people, other divine people here, and editors and journalists, good morning to all. I'm truly privileged to participate in the 4th India Ideas Conclave amongst such an intellectual gathering. I must say that India Foundation is doing a remarkable job by organizing India Ideas Conclave every year that brings together a luminary gathering of policymakers, public intellectual from India and abroad. The theme of the conclave, Leadership 21st Century, is very apt in today's socio-economic dynamics of the globe. I have been asked to share my thoughts on what type of skills and role is required by the leaders in the 21st century. However, first we should understand as what type of environment we are living in the 21st century. My dear friends, earlier where we are living in a closed, protected environment, over the last few decades, globalization has taken prominence and connected the world. With the rapid advancement of technologies, world is coming closer each passing day, and the interdependence of the countries has increased significantly. We are no more local citizens of country, we are all global citizens today. In fact, we are so much connected that earlier they used to say that if a USA sneezes, whole world catches cold. But today, any country sneezes, all other countries are catching cold. At the same time, we are witnessing regionalization with a few countries trying to protect their turfs by putting visa restrictions, embargoes, trade restrictions, closing their territories for migrants, and other such regulations. Brexit is a classic example of this. With this globalization, regionalization happening at the same time, the world is getting big time confused. All this is creating an increasingly complex, uncertainty, and volatile environment. If you see the dramatic turn of geopolitics, it is also making world more complicated. Recently, USA President Trump approved the Jerusalem as Israel's capital, Saudi Arabia's internal war, North Korea's testing nuclear weapons. All such events create huge repercussions across the globe. Today, countries are not worried about military war. They are more worried for cyber war. It is said that North Korean government, through its trained hackers, are earning $1 billion per year by hacking. Very recently, there was a cyber attack on USA electrical grid Just imagine if that would have been successfully, whole US economy would have come to standstill. With regards to the economic shift, we all know as how the regime of oil economy is almost perished and data economy has taken dominance. The advancement in technology is changing the economics overnight. These geopolitics and economic shifts are interlinked to great extent. For example, after oil demand is decreasing, oil-rich countries like Saudi Arabia are sitting on big-time economic challenges and trying to change their economic dependency from oil. Earlier, where they were lavish in spending, today all the costs have been curtailed. As a result, a lot of Indian workers are losing their job. This will also hit the remittance to India significantly. Friends, the globalization, regionalization, technological disruptions, cyber hacking, geopolitical tensions, economic shifts, all these have created a VUCA world, volatile, uncertainty, complex, and ambiguity world. Forex, commodity, stocks markets are extremely volatile. People are losing jobs. As per the estimates, in the next few decades, 40% of the Fortune 500 companies will not exist. They will be disrupted by the technological advancement. Experts say that maximum life of corporates in this century is 20 years. Tomorrow, what is going to happen, nobody knows. This is increasing our stress and anxiety levels tremendously. Hence, we need altogether a different type of leadership today. In my opinion, there is 7 elements will be crucial for the leadership, which are strong value system, greater flexibility and adaptability, frugality, ethics and governance. Many companies have vanished because of the ego. Many countries are suffering huge setbacks because their leadership thought of my way is right way. According to David and Stephen, author of book Economics, 15% of the company's revenue generally suffers due to ego problems of the senior leaders, as they tend to take wrong decisions just for the sake of their ego. Jim Collins, one of the global reputed business authors, studied around 1,400 global companies to find out that 2/3 of the total companies failed to move from good to great because of the personal egos of the management. At GMR, we have 7 core values: humility, entrepreneurship, teamwork, and relationship. Deliver the promise, learning and inner excellency, and social responsibility, respect for individual. With all humility, I can say that our value system helps us in making impossible tasks possible. We were able to deliver the world-class Delhi airport in record time of 37 months. When we took over the Delhi airport, was amongst the 10 worst airports in the world. Today, it is ranked as the #1 airport in the world in its category. When airport is privatized, the country is new for the airport, this airport system. We are new for this. This transformation is not easy. It took a great passion and dedication to turn around. Our value system was paramount in this. Second is greater flexibility and adaptability. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of uncertainty in today's environment. Hence, one needs to be more flexible and agile in order to quickly embrace the change. Times are gone when individuals or corporates sat on their laurels. Fast is no more relevant. Change is the only constant. One needs to be continuously change its strategy based on the changing environment. If anyone develops complacency and does not change the strategy based on the demand of the situation, it will vanish in due time. We have numerous examples of this. Our Hindustan Motors, once the leader of the Indian car market, has vanished because it was not flexible and failed to adapt to the new technology and designs. Same goes with the world leader in photography, Kodak company. Since it failed to digitalize, it no more exists today. Hence, if one needs to sustain in these uncertain times, greater flexibility and agility is required. Third is frugality. Today is very essential to maintain the liquidity. We should be very careful in using our resources and prudent in maintaining the balance between essential use and extra usage. This will also help us in providing flexibility for any unforeseen situation tomorrow. A wise leadership of tomorrow demands conserving the resources, keeping the liquidity. Fourth is ethics and governance. Strong governance helps in creating a platform of trust, respect with all partners and stakeholders. For family business, I believe that strong family governance is very crucial as it leads to good corporate governance. Thankful our GMR family, we have a family constitution in place which is registered with SEBI. I am also glad to share that we have a dedicated department of ethics and intelligence which works very discreetly to ensure the highest governance compliance in the organization. An ethical leadership with a strong governance is what is required in the leadership of 21st century. Fifth is inclusive growth. For today's leadership, one big caution is that this has to be evolved from a personal ambition to larger vision, making a difference to the society with a view that my surrounding should grow along with me, else the leadership will not be able to sustain in the long term as there will be a big divide between the rich and poor leading to social chaos. At GMR, we have our foundation, GMR Varalakshmi Foundation. The mandate is to work with the local communities wherever our business are. Before starting any new project, first our foundation goes and study the requirement of the underprivileged local community. Prepare a roadmap for them. Then only any business activity starts. We are running the foundation in the same professional manner as that of our business. We are working on the areas of education, healthcare, empowerment, and livelihood. Currently, Foundation is working across 27 locations, including 2 in Nepal, 1 in the Philippines. We also run 13 skill development centers across the country, which has become a role model today, and even the government is learning our methodology. We are skilling more than 6,000 underprivileged youths every year with 80% of placement record. As of today, we have been able to train more than 60,000 underprivileged youths. One of the initiatives which is very close to my heart is a Gifted Children, where we adopt the poorest of the poor children and take care of their entire education and upbringing like our own child. We have almost 200 such children. The first batch of 10 students, which was personally selected by me some 15 years back, was a great success, with 4 children becoming engineers, 2 chartered accountants, and 1 girl selected for higher education in USA. Such is the potential of these children if given a platform to learn. I believe that education is the only platform to eradicate the poverty. Here in Goa, as many of you will know, that we are building a new Mopa airport. Our foundation is very actively working with the local communities of Goa, even when the construction has not started. We do not do this for any compliance sake. We have been doing this since last 25 years and recently celebrated successful completion of 25 years of our foundation. I can very humbly say that today CSR Act has been influenced by our foundation. Such is the influence on a much bigger sphere. Sixth is a curiosity. In today's time, no one can sustain without innovation and creativity. The only attitude leading to this is curiosity. What is required? A childlike curiosity, which is a state of active interest and genuinely waiting to know more about something. Curiosity allows one to embrace unfamiliar circumstances, learn and discover new things. It will enable one to learn all the time, as I believe that one has to keep learning till he or she reaches the graveyard. We must behave like a student until we reach our graveyard. The seventh element, which is very important to manage the stress, is spirituality and yoga. I call it inner excellence. Please do not confuse this with any religion. Our spirituality, yoga and meditation is to know yourself. It helps in developing self-belief and fearless attitude, which is the core of any leader. For me, spirituality is essential, an inner journey which helps one attain mastery of one's own life, which helps one attain mastery of one's own life by managing thoughts, emotions, and situations. It reduces stress and provides strength to look upon adversity, not as a setback, but as an opportunity to learn. It helps in developing positive attitude in the most challenging times. Inner excellency also helps in developing higher degree of emotional quotient, that is called EQ, which is very important in the 21st century. Till some time ago, IQ was all that we required for success. However, now emotional intelligence, EQ, is much more important than IQ. In fact, most of the corporates across the globe, I'm talking to multinational companies, are looking for EQ rather than the traditional IQ. In hiring their leadership, EQ provides an individual the ability to adapt to every changing socio-economic environment. By managing physically, emotionally, spiritually, then only one will be able to manage the outside environment, family and society at large. It will provide a much required work-life balance. This way only one can effectively lead in this complex and uncertain world. To sum up, I would say that this interdependent, regionalized and technology-dominated world is going to be more and more complex and uncertain in the future. The leaders of tomorrow need to be more resilient with a great inner strength and extreme humility. They need to be flexible, frugal, ready to embrace the change, curious to learn new things, exhibits the highest form of ethics and governance, work with the philosophy of inclusion growth, and work on their inner development through spirituality and yoga. With these essential qualities of the 21st century, I am sure the future leadership will be able to successfully sail through the VUCA world. Before concluding, I must say that these 7 elements of leadership, which I spoke about, and are not only limited to the 21st century, but will provide with one with timeless leadership. In fact, these traits of timeless leadership can be found in our Bhagavad Gita. That Sri M started this with the Bhagavad Gita. I think that's the right initiative, which I believe the Bhagavad Gita, it gives the universal leadership book containing the entire wisdom in its 18 chapters. Scholars, politicians, scientists, inventors, corporate leaders, many of the great accomplished personalities from across the world have referred and taken lessons from Bhagavad Gita. Though there are numerous examples, however, I would like to mention about Robert Oppenheimer, father of the atomic bomb. He admitted that Gita was one of the books that most shaped his philosophy of life. He studied Sanskrit in Berkeley to understand the Bhagavad Gita in its native language. Later on, Bhagavad Gita became the guiding light for Robert Oppenheimer, bringing out the leader in him successfully. Since the last many decades, many top USA universities, including Harvard and other universities, are having management lessons and classes inspired from Bhagavad Gita. We in India should use the timeless leadership wisdom from our Bhagavad Gita to teach in our management schools. I am aware that IIM Kochi is already doing that. All our business schools should adopt Bhagavad Gita for learning rather than just making it a religious book. With this, I would like to express my gratitude to India Foundation for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts with such a eminent gathering here. Now, you can ask the questions, but don't ask me in Bhagavad Gita to chant in Sanskrit. I know the inner meanings. I read it in English and this. Even Bhagavad Gita also, Sanskrit I'm not reading, I'm meaning the meaning I'm reading. I'm trying to implement on that. Before going for this, one of the questions one of the Gurujis asked, why India is not blessed with the divine? I want to answer whatever my knowledge. Why the divine is not blessed? Okay, others.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Actually, I'm very pleased that you have raised that again. There are 5 elements of management. It's being taught in UK already. I've lived 20 years abroad, which is Adhishthanam, Karta, Karanam, Cheshta, and Daivam is destiny. India is blessed by divine. Gayanti Devah Kilagitakani, Dhanyastute Bharata Bhumi Bhage, Swarga Pavargas Padamarga Bhute, Bhavanti Bhuyah Purusha Suratvat. Yesterday, this discussion was going on of patriotism and nationalism. So India is a Deva Bhumi. So India is blessed by divine. So don't say that what you just mentioned. My question was, Daivam, the destiny, the Bhagyam, somehow Bhagyam had been not favoring for centuries. We have been fighting, we have been preserving our traditions, Vedas, all these things, but why that destiny, Vishwaguru that we had, fallen down? So that was the question. India is divine. Please don't go.
I'm not divining, I'm a question. India is blessed. Today, we are moving to agroeconomy, knowledge economy. This is a very sustainable economy. I will tell you, no multinational company survive without having a footprint in India. Last 5 years, 700 R&D centers set up in India. Today, India is a frugal innovation is happening. The whole world, anything is knowledge is there. That is a blessing of a divine, and ours is sustainable. There is no migration, there is no starvation. Then for us, all our way, whatever that rich and poor is division is there. But we are all blessed. Any other questions?
So I have a question, just a follow-up question. So I have a question, just a follow-up to your point where you talked about how technology is playing a key role today. Do you think the rise of, say, artificial intelligence could impact leadership in today's day and age?
Artificial intelligence?
Could impact leadership in today's day and age, since you talked about how technology has been playing a key role in leadership. So do you think the rise of artificial intelligence could somehow impact or influence leadership?
No, artificial intelligence, IoT, I don't think it will add a value to us. It won't think anything changed for a leadership. Only we have to embrace, the leader has to embrace that to understand that how it will be useful. Because every business, in any business, if you are not embracing the technology, if you are not behaving like a software company, technology company, you cannot survive. Whatever that we have to embrace, AI or anything else, we have to embrace, move like that. Even I'm an infrastructure company in airports. I already started registration using the AI, artificial intelligence. Otherwise, it's very difficult to this. Maybe immediately I may not be affect, but it is a systematically it will affect.
Sir, I have a question.
This is the last question. I'm sorry, we're running out of time, ma'am.
Should I ask or should I not?
But just ask the question, please, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm only asking the question. My question is to the previous speaker and this speaker and to the entire forum. Actually,
I'm a speaker before speaker.
Yeah, should we take Bhagavad Gita in toto and say this is the book for India, or should we take only leadership qualities of Bhagavad Gita? Because I get the doubt. Because always they say Dharma is much higher than anything, any other thing, and make so many protests. Actually, according to Constitution, Hindus are only a section of people. There are other sections. Their dharmas are different from ours. And then how can we say this is our Dharma, this has to prevail? Actually, leadership qualities, I don't have any doubt, and they should be followed. But what about the other things in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says something happens to Glani or something, they say, no, that happens to Dharma, you should go and fight. Should that be done or not?
The question is what in brief, what is the question?
My question is leadership qualities, I don't have any doubt. The other things in Bhagavad Gita, which they say, if something harmful happens to our Dharma, one has to fight. Like cows, they should be protected. If something happens to cows, that should be fought. Or something that has also to be taken. Should Bhagavad Gita be taken in toto?
No, Dharma changing according to time. I don't say 5,000 years back Dharma is same relevant to now.
That's what I want.
No, Dharma is I'm not much familiar what you are asking. Dharma is you are asking for cow, this one?
No, sir. Actually, they say this is Dharma. In TV debates and fights, they say this is Dharma, this has to be followed. Whenever something harmful happens to Dharma, we have to fight. Should we do that in a democracy? We should not go for violence.
Ma'am, I
we have
think
to follow.
This is a question. This is a question I think you should ask one of the acharyas here.
No.
No, whatever I should. First, I said
Acharya
entire
or
forum.
anything is the Bhagavad Gita is not a this one. I agree with you. Dharma is the dharmas are four. The Raja Dharma separate, Kshatriya Dharma separate, Vaishya Dharma is separate. If Dharma is for Kshatriya to protect the country, he has to fight. And Vaishya Dharma is different. Each dharmas are different. There are four dharmas of each community. A Kshatriya Dharma to protect the country, he has to fight. There is no second on that.
Okay. Even in a democracy, we can fight for Kshatriya Dharma. Is it possible? Even in a democracy, now we have adopted democracy. We have
democracy or anything is there, the leader has to protect the country for any circumstances. That is a democracy means what is the law of a leader is elected. The two of this one, leader is by force, leader is elected. Consent, leader is in consent. When his leader is this, his duty is to protect us. His dharma is to protect. Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much.
Sir. Sir, could you please wait? I would request Captain Alok Bansal of India Foundation to come to the stage and felicitate Sri Granthi Mallikarjuna Rao. Thank you, Sri Rao. Now I request the next guest, Ms. Nahid Farid, to come on the stage and give a presentation. Ms. Farid is the youngest member of the Afghan Parliament, and she is a member of the International Relations Committee of the nation. Ma'am, could you please come and give your presentation? And after that, there will be 5 minutes of question and answers. I would request the people to please keep to the point and just ask the question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, India Foundation friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's a true pleasure for me to be here. I prepared a kind of script about transitional leaders in 21st century. 8 centuries ago, a famous son of Balkh province of Afghanistan, one of the greatest poets in human history, Jalaluddin Rumi wrote, "Raise your voice, not your words. Nay, raise your words, not your voice. It's rain that gives flower, not thunder." This is the wisdom of the magnificent land and the great nation of Afghanistan that I have the pleasure to be speaking here on behalf. A land where legends are born of poetry and beauty and honor, of pride and generosity, and warmest embrace of friendship, and the strongest resistance for freedom and peace. The land of legends like Panini, who considered the father of Indian linguistics, Shakuni, the king of Kandahari kingdom, the princess Kandahari, or Gandhari, the prominent character of wisdom in Indian history. We are all from the same civilization, but unfortunately, so many artificial lines divided us. As an MP from Afghanistan, I'm truly honored to be at the same room with great leaders of 21st century, those who are here to discuss new solutions, to discover new answers to the old challenges that we face today in the world. The leaders that their life is their message to the world, and are here to make sure their life is inspiring. I'm so thrilled to be here at the same place with all of you because I believe many of us share the same destiny. We all believe that no barrier impedes person's willingness because it proved in the course of our lives. As the daughter of an immigrant and poor family from Afghanistan, who lived under suppression of Taliban in Herat province of Afghanistan, after Taliban regime, I obtained my degree in law. I became a women's rights activist at the age of 17. I received my master's degree from George Washington University in USA. And I finally got the honor of becoming people's youngest representative in Afghanistan parliament at the age of 26. And because the same as many of you, I learned to ignore barriers towards my only goal of being myself. We are all here because we are chosen to take a mission towards change and evolution in 21st century. Historically, evolution has been in nature's hand, but today and suddenly, it is largely in our hands. The job of today's people, or the transition leaders, will be to get humanity through the coming period of chaos, peril, and opportunities. Margaret Thatcher said, one of the great problems of our age is that we are governed by people who care more about the feelings than they do about thoughts or about ideas. And today at India Ideas Conclave, our mission is to produce ideas and thoughts to determine whether civilization will survive or not. We are here to conclude what can humanity become in future. Let me name few tasks that we have in front of ourselves. First of all, we are supposed to reverse poverty. While rich nations become richer, billions of lives and are in extreme poverty with short, brutal lives, we must commit to the task of raising the voice of the poor, strengthening the aid agencies, harnessing global science, and promising sustainable development to reverse poverty. The second, which is very important, and I'm coming from a country that's affected by it, is terrorism. We are here to diffuse terrorism. The age of terrorism is rising with the availability of weapons of mass destruction that are becoming increasingly less expensive and easier to access. And my country is a true victim of it. It is vital to address the reasons why people want to become terrorists and to achieve cooperation among different hostile cultures. Contemporary terrorists and the groups of terror carry the type of perception and that divide everything into two parts, black and white, friends and enemies, insiders and outsiders, divine and devil. Accordingly, they believe that everything and everyone out of this circle and out of their circle deserve to be destroyed. Such group continues showing worst kind of atrocity and inhuman acts by prolonging bloodshed, with no commitment to international rules of battles, no commitment to human rights, children's rights, protecting civilians, and etc. The next task is expanding human potential and quality education. Most people today fall outrageously short of their potential. The mission of 21st century leaders is that they have to harness powerful technologies that accelerate learning and educational potential. Fourth task is dealing effectively with globalization. The planet is shrinking. We all know that. And the bandwidth is increasing. But globalism should be designed to allow local cultures to thrive and be protected. The right balance between global and local should be achieved, and we have to consider this as a very important task. Failing nations must be helped to become developing nations. The fifth task is saving the earth. I'm going to move to the next one. The sixth task that we have is achieving sustainable lifestyle, because many of people of the planet cannot have comfortable lifestyles due to many factors that I don't want to name because of the shortage of the time. The seventh task is preventing all-out war. All-out war is the nuclear and biological weapons that are a threat to the human being today. This century contains more threats from more weapons of mass destruction than ever before. 8 is protecting the biosphere. 9 is stabilizing population growth, because extreme poverty can be tied to population problems. Population declines when GDP rises. Improving lifestyles equates with controlling population growth. 10th is cultivating creativity. That we had a representation about it earlier. Technology will lead to an era of extreme creativity. Exciting jobs will develop. And rich countries will help young people around the planet to become entrepreneurs. New supply chain and electronically connected business will bring value, and we have to bring new generation into it. 11, planning an advanced civilization. Sooner or later, we all know that machines will do all the work. And there will be a major increase in real wealth. We need to be asking ourselves now, what kind of civilization would we build if we could do anything in the future? And 12 is bridging the skill and wisdom, which is very important from my point of view. A serious problem today is the gap between our skill and our wisdom. Science and technology is accelerating, but wisdom is not. I named few tasks, but I'm sure we will discover many more in the course of our lives. But I hope the day will come soon when energy from Central Asia countries will come and power prosperity in South Asia countries. When a Kabuliwala from my country or Kandahariwala from my country can once again come across easily to win Indian hearts. When people of Kazakhstan can relish the wonderful flute of Afghanistan easily. When Afghans do not have to pay an enormous price to buy their favorite tea from Sri Lanka. My friends from all Central and South Asia countries in this hall, prosperity has always been the course of this region's history. We all know about it. And it must be the path to its future. And you are the agents of such a striking change. Terror and violence cannot be the instrument to shape our nation's future or dictate the choices that our people are going to make. Our nation have the wisdom to speak and to seek peace with neighbors, but also the courage to defend the freedom. Let's ensure that all together. Dear delegates, you are all decision makers, scientists, inventors. Remember that you must support Afghanistan, my country, without timelines, because the new clouds of extremism and terrorism are rising in this region, even as the old ones are darkening our skies. And because Afghanistan are not only fighting for its own and their own future, but are standing up for all of us and a safer world. I promise World will be a better place when we can experience the real wealth of Afghan people in their diversity and rich heritage. It is time for every one of us in the region and the rest of the world to come together. The sacrifice must not go in vain. The flame of hope should not die. No girl that steps into this world should slip into darkness of denied opportunities. No son should face the choice of gun and refugee. No mother should fear bringing a child into this world. No one kneeling in prayer in a mosque should be killed in the name of religion. No elder should look back on his youth wasted in conflicts and see the same future for his grandchild. Every youth in Afghanistan, in India, in the region of South Asia should see a future which IT stands for information technology, not international terrorism. The promise and the opportunities of 21st century belong to our youth as much as anyone else in the world. I'm confident that as leaders of the world and also as participants, we will make sure hope will return to our homes, laughter in our schools, life in our streets, prosperity in our cities, unity in our societies, and peace in our region. I'm confident that you will leave the world a very better place than when you arrived, because you are leaders of 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fareed, for that impassioned speech. Now I will ask if there are any questions for Ms. Fareed, but please keep them to the point. Yes.
Adab, salam. Thanks for bringing Rumi at the beginning of your quote. Just a brief question that since you're from Afghanistan and a young parliamentarian, and we know the shared history, just a year back when our Honorable Prime Minister visited Afghanistan, inaugurated the dam, he talked about the shared history of the Chishti Sharif and India. So as a young parliamentarian, we have seen that Taliban has kind of taken away and destroyed the spiritual heritage. How would you propose to your parliament in today's time to revive the spiritual heritage and tradition of Afghanistan?
Thank you for raising such an important question. Regarding the Chishti Sharif, I'm from Herat, the province that the Salma Dam is there, and it's the true time and exact time that I take the opportunity to thank the people of India for helping Afghanistan and my province to have a dam to power their homes and do the irrigation in their lands. This is what friends do in the hard days. So we are receiving the help of the people of India, and I'm thankful of this. You know, there is I don't remember who was the person, but there was a leader of terrorist groups that was interviewing with a Western journalist. And he said that, you know, you Western, you have the watch, but we, as terrorist groups, we have the time. So they have this prolonged war of bloodshed, and they have the time, and they continue killing, and the people are the victims, and the proxy war is continuing. And at the end of the day, you see 15 years continued, and nothing happened to have a better, result and future for our people. What we do right now in Afghanistan Parliament is to have nations who are sponsors of terrorism sit down in the table and take the responsibility and understand that the region needs to be prosperous. And we have to understand and respect the pains and problems that countries have. We shouldn't interfere the future of and the situation of life of different nations, like my nation that is receiving so many threats from outside, like Pakistan. And we really want these countries as sponsors of terrorism, that we have enough evidence about them. that should sit down at the table and say, we respect the people of Afghanistan and we don't want to interfere to their situation, to their life. We are doing this, but we have to have the whole world with us. We have to have the international community with us. We have to have Indians with us. We have to have South Asian countries with us to understand that we are all from the same place, understanding what is right, what is wrong, and we have to ensure a better future for our children. Thank you.
Any other questions? It's time for one question, please.
Hi, wonderful, wonderful speech. Enjoyed it thoroughly, and you're an inspiration not only to women in Afghanistan, but all over the world. So, I mean, hats off to you. My question is that being a young woman parliamentarian in Afghanistan, what are the difficulties that you face for being just that, a young woman parliamentarian, and how do you overcome it? And how do you ignore comments and stuff like that? How do you go about doing what you're doing and so well?
Thank you. You know that being a woman in Afghanistan, a young woman, it's not easy, even if you are not a member of parliament. But as a mother, as a woman who has so many responsibilities and also having the responsibility of representing people, the situation is tough. But you know, at the end of the day, I every day say one thing to myself, that you know, you have to live a better Afghanistan than your mother did. But you have to do something for this country. Many people say, oh, you came from US to live in Afghanistan, you're crazy. And I say, you know what? I cannot live outside the country and seeing all this problem are happening in my country. Maybe the development line the deadline that we have, for example, having a better situation in education and poverty rate in security, this way and this path is so long. We may reach to it in 10 years instead of 5 years, but we have to walk. And who is going to walk? We have to walk. If we stand up and we don't continue walking, so who is going to continue our path? We are opening the door. We keep this door open for the next generation to come and continue this. And this is my reason to be there and to represent people.
Thank you so much, ma'am, as we are
Just
overshooting the time.
one mention. It was very kind of you to recall the connection of Padini, because I am a grammarian. Padini has a great connection, and he was also called Shala Tureja because he hailed from the village Shalatura. I just wanted, I'm little curious to know that whether the Afghans of this generation, do they have any intentions or do you find any prospects of their finding out their earlier heritage? Because as our traditions say that many of the scholars and the rishis, they hailed from the Gandhara and so-called regions. In the current generations, do you find any connections, probably probably academic research, may not be religious, but any academic research being revived or some sort of courses started in some universities or something for people to pursue? Any prospects?
I didn't get the question.
He's asking if there are any younger people in Afghanistan who are pursuing studies in their roots, trying to find out more about Gandhar and their Mahabharat roots. And
yes, we have different universities, different research organizations in Afghanistan that are seeking, and also they have studies in this regard. But you know what? The problem that we have right now is that we forgot about all these things, about even the background, the civilization, the histories that we have. Because the priority is that we have to, it's the matter of life and death. We have to stay alive. Going outside, there is a blast. Are we going to stay alive or not? Are we going to come back to home alive or not? I mean, the priority is something like that. That's why the whole budget of the country goes to insecurity. The whole budget of the country goes to the matter of taking security of different provinces of Afghanistan instead of spending money on this kind of issues that is very important for us. But we really have something as background, as a history, and we want to keep it. and we continue keeping it, and we want to have your help in that regard to keep that as a valuable tool to inspire the next generation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fareed. Now I request Sri Shakti Sinha, Director of Nehru Memorial Museum, to come on the stage and present and felicitate Ms. Fareed. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Ms. Fareed. Now I request Sri Swapan Dasgupta to come to the stage and present his presentation. Mr. Swapan Dasgupta is, as we all know, a senior Indian journalist, author, and he is the Member of Parliament. Swapanda.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's always very daunting to follow after a very inspired and very motivational speech which we've just heard. And I want to thank Ms. Fareed for this wonderful opportunity we got of getting an insight. And I think it epitomizes some of the problems, some of the issues which confront us. When Mr. Rao was speaking, I was struck that here is an Indian businessman who 10 years ago or maybe 15 years ago would have been talking about how the need to protect Indian entrepreneurship. Today, he thought it was interesting, or it was for him a matter of concern, that Mr. Trump was relocating his embassy to Jerusalem. Priorities change, his interests change, or whether the script has changed, I don't know. I also thank Ms. Fareed for also reminding us that our links with Afghanistan are very age-old. They extend to Panini, but they also extend to Shakuni. The second part is a little more problematic. It extends to Ghazni, it extends to Ahmad Shah Massoud. And I think it's important to realize that when we talk about change, and leadership these days is always concerned with there's always that added thing, change. This is the 21st century. We are changing. In Afghanistan, the status of women cannot be that of the 7th century. It used to be said in Afghanistan that women are an invisible people. They must become visible. And that's one of the biggest manifestations of change which come in. At the same time, there are certain problems which are associated with change. Recently, I was at an exhibition in Berlin. It was an exhibition on German colonialism. Now, German colonialism, as you well know, didn't have a very deep history. It really lasted for less than 60 years. And it was mainly concentrated around East Africa. And the treatment of that past was very interesting. It was irreverent. They didn't celebrate it. But what struck me most was that right at the conclusion of that exhibition, there was a statue of some governor of some East African province who had been a German, which had been once relocated from Dar es Salaam to Hamburg. And then, sometime in the 60s, they decided to remove it. And they had that statue lying horizontal, flat, with spray painted on it. In other words, the heroes of yesterday can be trampled underfoot today. That, to my mind, marks something of a problematic degree of change. The marked irreverence which we have sometimes. There is a difference between a critical view of the past and a dismissive view of the past. And change to be epitomized within that framework. It was Edmund Burke who once talked that when he was talking about governance, and he said, governance involves a contract between the living, the dead, and the unborn. And I think it's very important to look at that. When we talk about the environment, we often forget that we are really talking about the unborn. Just as much in Delhi, we also talk about the living who might also be dead. So the appreciation of change has to be very nuanced. There is a great excitement in embracing technology. Certainly, technology is very, very exciting. I remember the days as a student in the shortage economy of the 70s, when to even get a book meant traipsing many miles to the nearest library and then copying certain things by longhand, then coming back to the room and then reading it. Xerox was a luxury. Then came Xerox, and now accessibility of information, accessibility of knowledge is not only easier, but international. It's global. I can read any of the newspapers, which earlier we had to wait for 3 weeks if you had to get a foreign newspaper. So there is that ready excitement which has come about, and the world has been made into a smaller place. Ms. Farid talked about the desirability. I would love the day when we can see the Kabuliwala back on the streets, selling those dried fruits once again. It's childhood memories which come back. And it's something which I'd love to be in a position where I can actually travel to Mazar-e-Sharif. And we'd love to get those melons. Similarly, there is that need. And in Europe, it's now traveling is easier, purchasing is easier. So there is the desirability of having an economic integration where we talk about the global citizenship. But at the same time, let's look at what is happening in Europe. Why is it that despite a very contrived attempt to create an European identity, there is always that fallback into what is called the national identity? Does the fact that tomorrow, if Indian goods are available in Kabul or Herat or Kandahar, will they cease to be Afghans? Is it desirable that they cease to be Afghans? Is it desirable that just because we can get certain commodities from the United States, we'll suddenly look upon ourselves as Americans? So change itself has to be qualified. That there is a certain rootedness of India. There is a certain rootedness of every province. And when leadership talks about cosmopolitanism, when leadership talks about farsightedness, they often forget that it is important to actually locate our cultural roots. That when we talk about technology, when we talk about change, there is a global dimension. But there is what is called a body of indigenous knowledge, which forms customs, which is sometimes called prejudices. Now, the term prejudice itself is a very complex one. Prejudice can be twofold. One can be the prejudice saying that a woman's place is indoors, should not see the sunlight. That is one form of prejudice. But there is also something called a prejudice which says, well, we mustn't sow this crop at this time of the year. That is born out of an accumulated local knowledge, a body of traditional knowledge which sometimes passes off as prejudice, but which again revives itself. Modern medicine is a classic example of that. What was thought to be a panacea for everything is today turning out, in many cases, to have debilitating side effects, which was not the case earlier with traditional medicine. So the need for a constant balance and not to be overwhelmed by this excitement that change, we must change, we must change. And I think one of the basic challenges which leadership has to confront more than ever before is to have a sense of what I might be calling common decencies. And those common decencies are age-old. And those common decencies have to be upheld at every point. And secondly, a very firm sense of who we are. What is it? What is the essence of what we are? The essence of what we are is not determined by what clothes I'm wearing today, but what's actually in here. What is that identity? I'm not one of those who believes that the Bhagavad Gita contains all the wisdom. It may contain a lot of wisdom, but there must be wisdom which goes after it also. It is important to realize that what makes us is an amalgam of various influences. And it's fundamental to for the leadership of the country to actually keep people well within that firm foothold of where we are. A leader has various choices. They can either follow a rabble, they can lead, or they can mold. They must be both influenced and be an influencer. And I think that's really the challenge that we have, is that the word change has to be qualified in a very, very serious way. And it's always important when we confront the word change, we examine it far more and say, what sort of change? Is this a desirable change? Or is this a change which we would like to resist? And many of the political questions which we come across today really center on this problematic. The need to actually have a very sharp look. Otherwise, sometimes the term change, parivartan, is very heady, very exciting. Each generation takes something of the preceding generation. But as someone said, between the 20th and the 21st centuries, the connection between the preceding generation and the following generation is becoming less, is becoming more and more tenuous. And that, to my mind, that rupture is something which we have to be alert to. Every generation, the pace of change is very rapid today. Can you realize that in India, for example, our GDP in the past 25 years grew more than what had happened in the past 150 years. So along with it, you can see what the corresponding shifts have been. And if at this moment, we are not conscious of who we are, what our sense of rootedness is, what our inheritance is, what our view of the future is, we are likely to get blown off our feet. Something which Tagore warned about keeping the doors open, allowing all the influences, but still having your feet firmly on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chopanda, for that presentation in your usual inimitable style. I request people to ask questions. We have only 5 minutes for questions, so please be brief. I know I hate to tell this again and again, but please be brief and to the point.
Shakti.
Thank you, Swapan, and thanks for reminding us of Mazar-e-Sharif in the 70s. My point to you is, you talked about having that essence, innateness, and also the rapid change happening. Now, it's only in retrospect that one knows whether the shift that you made retain your essence, or the fact that you're actually changing beyond what you know you're changing. How does the generation going through it actually take a judgment call on that?
So it's a very important question. We are often wise in hindsight. I mean, that has always been the case. But the importance is to be self-consciously aware that change per se is not necessarily always an improvement. It's a change, but it's not necessarily an improvement. And it's that having that self-conscious appreciation, whether we have an informed sense of change or we jump into it blindly. Of course we make mistakes. We do make mistakes. We make miscalculations. To err is only human. But I'm only suggesting that when we exercise choice, to have that in mind.
Next question, please.
Dasgupta, thank you very much. But I was hoping to hear from you on the theme of this talk, leadership in 21st century. Could you connect it with the change phenomena that you're talking about? Is the leadership change in accordance with the right change, in your opinion? Is the change unfolding as it should, in your opinion? And do we have the leadership appropriate?
I'm sorry, what did you say last? The change is unfolding in
Is
that?
the change unfolding as you would like it? And is the leadership that we currently have is connected with that change or stimulating that change? Do we have the right leadership for the right kind of change that we need here, in your opinion?
Well, leadership is what we are, what we get. I mean, every country gets the leader it deserves. Every country chooses the leader it deserves. You see, the point is very simply this, that the leadership which emerges in any place stems from what they perceive are the challenges. Why was Donald Trump elected? Now, for some people, it's said that America voted for Donald Trump in a fit of collective madness. But there must have been a sense of deep anxiety, deep unease, which prompted a choice of that nature, a very unorthodox choice. Was there a dissatisfaction with the existing mold of politics? Why is it that a country like Hungary, which is a very interesting country incidentally to study, has opted for a way in which it defies what the current trends in European thought are, and actually looks back to its Christian inheritance, where the European Union is trying to actually talk about a more cosmopolitan, secular inheritance, which doesn't talk about all these things. Why is it that in certain countries they're talking about going back, despite the commonalities of a common market, to actually also discovering a national identity? Every leadership which any country throws up is basically a consequence of what they perceive are the challenges and what are the opportunities before them. We have thrown up a particular type of national leadership which believes that India has missed opportunities, that India has not lived up to its potential, that therefore the most important priority for us is to gear ourselves up, discover a sense of motivation, and then move in that direction by exercising difficult options. It's that exercising of difficult options which a leadership is capable of steering us through. We can also have a leadership which can take the path of least resistance. Often they do. We can plod along famously and India is great for muddling through. So ultimately it's a matter of collective choice. I believe whatever it is a conscious application of mind, which is really the question of politics. That's where political judgment comes in most important. It's to see the available options and see which one fits what our sense of priority is. And I believe India's sense of priority is not that it's India's greatness is written in destiny. I don't believe by that. Nothing is predestined. Destiny is what you make of it. It was Stephen Spender who said, I think, that those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first call promising. I think we in India have often learned that we are a country with great potential. Now, I'd like to come to a position that we are a country with a great sense of achievement.
Swapanda, you mentioned the rapid growth in technology, which is rapid growth which has taken place, for example, in the last 25 years. And technology had a big part to play in that. But at the same time, the gaps or the rupture that you mentioned also is enabled to a certain extent by the technology. So, how?
What is unable to be? What can't be done by technology?
No, what can't be done? I'm claiming that a lot of advances that have been made in the last 25-30 years, the GDP growth that you mentioned, were largely driven by the rapid advancement which happened in technology, in most of the technologies in the last 25-30 years. So most particularly with information technology. But do you also think that that can also be a divisive factor in the context of the rupture that you have mentioned while concluding your remarks? And if so, then how does the leadership deal with that?
No, anything can be divisive and iniquitous if you don't master it. I think technology is an opportunity for us. I think if we are going to complain all the time, oh, it's unequal. Yes, it is unequal. I mean, one of the biggest problems, which for instance, there's a great debate going on in the WTO about e-commerce. And one of the misgivings which we have is that, look, our sense of connectivity is uneven. There are large parts of India which are just not connected. It's just not linked. Therefore, till we have this thing, yes, that's one way of looking at it. But the question is, what are we doing? I think the most important thing about technology is not to reject it. Embrace it. Get on top of it. Be the innovators. Be the creators. I mean, I think, why are we content to merely be the mysteries? Are we creating enough? Our IT companies, we've got into the lowest end of the value chain. Have we climbed up to the top end of the value chain? So we talk about, oh, there are now immigration problems, etc., etc. We had the time, we had the profits. Were they actually employed in the right direction? Oh, we just content, oh, we'll say body shopping, cheap labor, bhej do yahan. So these again, technology is not really there. Within technology comes, what do we do with technology? What are the choices we exercise given the availability options with us? And that's really the question of how we can change. And that to my mind is also a political question. Because the type of direction in which we move ourselves is very important. I mean, we can look at Make in India as a protectionist gesture. Mr. GMR will get all the airports in to run, and he'll run them competently. But is that the only way? Or is this a small sort of grace period we are giving to somebody to say, okay, in 10 years, catch up. This is the time you have, do it. Because after that, we won't. It's those grace marks which we often give for someone who may have come in the middle of the term.
Thank you so much, Swapanda. Now I request Sri Binod Bavri, Director of India Foundation, to come to the stage and felicitate Sri Swapanda Gupta. Thank you so much. Now we move to the last speaker for this session. I request Dr. Rajiv P. Lal to come on the stage and present his presentation. Dr. Rajiv P. Lal is the founder MD of IDFC Bank. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here to the India Foundation. Distinguished guests, fellow speakers, delegates and friends, it's a real privilege to address this audience on the very difficult issue of leadership for the 25th century. I'm a visual person, so if you will bear with me, I have accompanying slides just to anchor the few comments that I want to share with you. What I thought I would do, actually it builds on a number of points that have been made by fellow speakers. And as the last speaker, I hope that in my own way I'm able to pick up some of the various threads that have been presented to you. What I thought I'd do is to frame the question of leadership not in a very abstract platform of the 21st century, but rather frame it in the context of the specific challenge that we are facing today, which is the creation of a new India. There is a narrative in the current government about creating this new India. There is the ambition to do so within a short time span. And to my mind, this challenge has three very important dimensions, each of which require a new challenge or pose a new challenge for leadership. So the first is, stay to the first slide. First is the economy. We did have reforms in 1991 that took India faster towards closer to a market-based economy. But that journey is still far from complete. And for a lot of us who are in business, this whole discussion and debate about the ease of doing business, the challenges of reinvigorating the animal spirits that drive private enterprise and investment in the country, that still remains very much alive. The reality is that there is actually a big tension between the nature of democratic politics and markets. And this is quite contrary to the narrative that came out of the Washington Consensus in the 1990s. Some of you will remember Francis Fukuyama's essay, The End of History, where he was arguing that it's a dialectic, it's inevitable that all societies will move towards a market-based economy and a democratically elected government as a way of organizing themselves. And that notion of the two working together, reinforcing each other, is based on a libertarian idea of freedom. I think the lived reality is different, and we've seen this since the election of President Trump is an indication of this. Democracy demands justice, social justice. Markets are amoral. They're looking to deliver efficiency. Efficiency and justice are not easy bedfellows. So the real challenge for a country such as ours that received universal suffrage at a level of development much, much earlier than any other democracy in the world, this is a point that has been made many times, but it's worth reflecting on it. We gave the right to vote to the largest number of poor people anywhere in the world. So the tension between justice and efficiency is very real. So my first point is that the big challenge for building the new India, given the importance of markets for delivering growth and prosperity, is to navigate the balance, or to find the right balance between justice and efficiency. That's the challenge of the economy. The next one. Second is the state. Again, going back to a tired debate of the 1990s, it's no longer about a big state versus a small state. The debate is no longer about public sector versus private sector. I think the lived experience and sound common sense suggests the obvious, which is that we need both. Our particular challenge at this time is actually to strengthen what has become a weakened state. It actually requires a very strong and well-functioning state to deliver fairness. It is a weak state that is vulnerable to vested interests, that is vulnerable to capture by cronies, and that is vulnerable to populist decision-making, and therefore profligacy. Our challenge is actually to strengthen the state. It is no secret, it's much talked about, and a lot of intellectuals just opine or just observe the trajectory of the declining state of our institutions of democratic governance in this country. Whether it is an overburdened judiciary, whether it is a dysfunctional bureaucracy that is unable to deliver effective services to the last mile to the citizen, whether it is money in politics, we all know this. But the suggestion of a lot of these observers is that, we must strengthen our institutions. But how do you strengthen institutions? And here I want to bring my learning from my corporate experience. A strong institution can survive weak leadership, I think everybody understands. But what a lot of people are unwilling to accept or acknowledge, that it actually requires strong leaders to strengthen weak institutions. Institutions cannot be strengthened just through legislation. There's this narrative about institutionalization. The individual is not important. Yes, in a multi-generational sense, the individual is not important. The institution is more important than the individual. But when you are in a state of weakened institution, it requires inspired, strong, focused leadership to reverse that trend. Thank you. So, the second challenge vis-à-vis the state for leadership in our country to build new India is for our leadership to rise above the vested interests that are weakening and capturing our state today. Can you help me with the third slide? Yeah. The third pillar that we have to address to build the new India is society. And on the state and nature of Indian society today, it's not unique. It's not a unique predicament. But my observation is that there is necessarily, inevitably, a growing tension. This is actually what Swapanda was talking about a few minutes ago, about tradition in a modernizing society. There is a growing tension between the modernizing pressure that comes from economic growth in a globalized economy and conservatism of a traditional society. So let's take a couple of examples. You take the participation of women in the workplace. India is far behind even our neighbors. I happened to be in Vietnam a couple of days ago, and it struck me, and I went back to look at the numbers. They have done an incredible job post the war with the US in investing in education to bring women's participation to the workplace. Women's participation in the workplace has obvious benefits in terms of public health, in terms of declining fertility rates, productivity, etc. That's one of the tensions that we are living through in our country from the point of view of society. Second tension is when you get this growth. Sapanda was mentioning that in the last 25 years, we've seen GDP growth greater than the last 150, previous 150. This necessarily dislocates various people in different parts of society. There is very fierce contestation for new identities. People who were not recognized before are rightly fighting for the right to be recognized, fighting for their place in the sun. This creates divisiveness. And my personal view is that the politics based on identity, mandalism, I think has now run its course. It helped provide social mobility to a number of caste constituents in the country. But now we cannot continue with the task of nation building without revisiting the idea of national identity. So it seems to me that the third and most important challenge for leadership is to rise above the current fractious contests with respect to identity and help forge a new national identity for the new India. Last slide. So if you pull all these strands together, there are really, in summary, three challenges, I believe, that leadership must confront to build a new India. First, on the economy, rise above the pressure of democratic politics to come up or decide on the basis of the lowest common denominator, which is populism. So rise above the pressures of populism. Second, to build a stronger state, rise above the pressures of vested interests, not be captured by them. And third, from the point of view of building a new society for a new India, rise above the pressures of fractiousness and divisive identities. The burden for the new elite of this country, in a nutshell, is to rise above leadership to take on the challenge of statesmanship. The leaders of tomorrow, or the leaders of today, must be statesmen. So the transition from leadership to statesmanship is the need of the hour. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very eloquent presentation on the challenges before 21st century leadership. I now open the floor for questions. Only 2 questions, please, because we are already running short of time.
हेलो हरिओम नमस्कार एकदम स्पष्ट प्रश्न करूंगा In your opinion, leaders or statesmen, are there born leaders or leaders and statesmen can be made? Thank you. So DNA plays a big role. NASA, US has come with a big report how DNA is built and lot of analysis I happened to see firsthand. On 14th, I was in Bangalore, visiting from North America, and we went to S. Vyasa, Swami Vivekananda Anusandhana Kendra. They have bought, huge investments have been done. So are leaders and statesmen born, or they can be built through
Right. So
efforts?
that's actually it's a terrific question. I personally believe that leaders can be made. So your life experience shapes your leadership skills and qualities. Obviously, there are some skills that are innate to people that some have, others don't have. That will always remain a reality. But leaders can be shaped. And it seems to me that one of the big responsibilities that all of us have is to invest very heavily in actually building leadership depth at every level. Whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, whether it's in spirituality, whether it's in education, health, every level, we need to take on that burden of building that class of leadership. I'll say something a little controversial here. You know, again, it's I want to take on as a caricature the libertarian view that freedom is everything, representation is everything. You know, so many debates in the last decade, I recollect, when some government scheme is not working, what is the answer? Make it more transparent, make it more accountable, let community, let all society participate in the design of that. That's a nice theoretical idea. Representation is extremely important. But when it comes to administration, and when it comes to running something, and this is my corporate background speaking, right? It requires leadership. And so, investing in the development of leadership is vital.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, ma'am. We are already running late by half an hour, so I have to call it.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, you can have a conversation with him later on. Sir, we are really running out of time, sir, please. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Dr. Lal. Now I request Shri Ashok Mittal, Director of India Foundation, to come on the dais and felicitate Shri Lal. Thank you, everybody. The next session will begin almost immediately. It's a very interesting discussion on intellectual leadership, and Sudarshan will be the MC. So over to Sudarshan.